Welcome to Inspire Saratoga, a show that highlights the people and stories that make our home a place of strength, inspiration, and success. I'm Michael Kurkowski, physical and mental performance coach and resident of Saratoga Springs. And in this show, my mission is to connect with the great people who also call this place home, hear about their work and what they do for this town, and share their insights and experiences in health, wealth, and happiness for you, my neighbors. Thank you for joining me wherever you are in town. Let's dive in. Sarah Craig, welcome to Inspire Saratoga.
Thanks for having me on the podcast. This is going to be fun.
It should be fun. Yeah. Well, thank you for bringing me into your space. We're in Caffe Lena, which is an unbelievably beautiful space here, kind of a staple in the area. And you've been here for quite some time.
I have. This is, I passed my 30th anniversary in February. So it's not what I thought I was going to do with my life, but it is what I have done with pretty much my entire adult life.
Okay. 30 years. All right.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I want to dive into, like the 30-year venture with you.
Sure.
And all the work that you've done with Caffe Lena. To kick this off though, what's your time been like in Saratoga? Are you from here? Did you move here? How did the early days of Sarah start?
Yeah, so I actually live on the far side of Washington County. I live right on the Vermont border in a very rural area. And when I walk to the top of my property, to the top of the field by my house, I can look over the nearby hills and I can see Mount Equinox in Manchester, which is where my family has been since about 1800. So that piece of land is very important to me, and my roots in the area are important to me. When I went looking for a job, when I moved back to the area after being in Boston for a few years, I thought that I would probably work in the Manchester area, but indeed Saratoga is where I found this position. And so I've been making that drive along the Battenkill through Greenwich and over from Schuylerville over here for quite a long time now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you lived in Boston for a little bit.
Yeah, so I was from Manchester, Vermont, and then went to University of Vermont, and then down in Boston for about 5 years of getting real world experience and building a resume. And then I came back up here because I just really wanted to see something beautiful out every window.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So when you got to Saratoga, did you know of this area before like the job opened up?
The first time that I had been here was in 1985 when I was a senior in high school, and I came over to see the Grateful Dead at SPAC.
Okay.
And that was my first trip to Saratoga. Memorable, loved it. Was kind of haunted by the memory of the way the town looked, I think, just kind of the architecture of it, and feeling like it was such a different world from New England. It really has a different feel over here on this side of the border.
Yeah. Okay. I lived in Boston for a short period of time in my 20s.
Okay.
And Saratoga, there's a slight little kind of Bostonian feel to it.
Yeah, I could see that. It's like, it's something that, like Boston is a city. It's one of the major East Coast cities, but it feels like a town. And Saratoga is a city that feels like a little town too.
Yes.
I think that's part of it.
That was the weirdest thing when I lived in Boston. It's like, we know it as a big city, but we lived in Allston, Brighton, and that was like a little town. And then you go to Kenmore area, and then there's, all the little different, the North End. It's all these small little town-based feels in this big city. Because I only knew my parents were from New York City, and New York City feels like a city. Boston was right. And when we used to come up to Saratoga, I was like, this has a little bit of that same vibe to it at the same time, like that small town, but there's enough kind of buzz that's going on.
Absolutely. It's something that some of my friends in the nonprofit world here in town talk about a lot. It's like, it's big enough to have a critical mass of people to do projects together and to have people show up for the things that you put on. And it's small enough to be able to have an impact, without like a huge marketing budget or, a huge team. Like so it's just like very right sized, it feels like, for just having a very active civic life.
Yeah. Did you see that like early on when you first came here, or was that kind of a thought process that has changed and evolved over time?
It took me a little while to get to know this town, because I think, it's funny what you said actually is bringing something back for me. When I first moved here and I looked at it, I expected it to be like Boston.
Mm,
It's like I expected it to be culturally similar to Boston and have some of the same, kind of how people organize themselves into different like identities and
sure.
camps and all that kind of stuff. It's very, very different from Boston on that cultural level. And so it took me a little while to get to know Saratoga. And one thing that I loved right off the bat was, so it was pretty different back then in 1995. It hadn't really started like kind of blossoming with all this new building downtown. I feel like it was a little bit more dominated by its colorful local characters.
Okay.
And there were a lot of people who you just knew on the street or, in the coffee shops and
Sure.
stuff like that. And the cafe was very, very different then, and a lot of those colorful local characters floated through these doors.
Okay.
No doubt about it. And I love that about it. There's this, I mean, people joke about the cafe of the old days. This has always been kind of where the colorful people congregated
Okay.
in Saratoga since 1960, and the town used to call them Lena's Loonies. But
Those are the best people. Those are my favorite people.
my
Yeah.
favorite people too.
Yeah.
It's kind of my specialty. But
How do you think of that, like colorful? Is it like just kind of free spirited, more
it's
the creatives, they don't quite fit in a box?
yeah, I would say all of that. And it's lots of times people whose maybe the jobs that they do are just to put food on the table, but their life is lived in whatever their special interests are,
Yeah.
record collecting or, alternative healing or the springs,
Mhm.
all that kind of stuff. Or they're just, yeah, and lots of times they are people who are actually quite successful entrepreneurs, but just, don't want to live in an ivory tower in any way, who just want to know everybody and experience everything. And there's a lot of that in this town. I feel like it's an extremely outgoing kind of town. Like it's an extroverted personality. That's Saratoga's personality. It's very extroverted. And so you really do see people from all strata congregating together in places like Uncommon Grounds and just in favorite spots around town.
Right.
And I don't know that I've really seen that too much out in the world. And I feel like that's something, I'm sure it's not unique to Saratoga, but there's something about the mixing that happens in this town that I feel is really special.
Right. That's an interesting perspective. I think it's the word that keeps coming to my mind with that is curiosity.
Yeah,
It's a curious town.
it is. Yeah.
And I think if you get to a too big of a space, then everybody kind of huddles in their own clique and you by probably just osmosis like close mind off a little bit, where keeping that open mind, like entrepreneurs, like some of those are, if you're a good entrepreneur, you're a curious person.
Oh, very much
And
so.
yeah, and you're probably trying to find lessons from a lot of different people, not just your own vocation or the work that you're doing, but if you're in business, you can learn something from a musician or somebody else. I think that's the word that keeps popping up to my mind.
Yep, absolutely. And people, like I said earlier, they show up to do stuff in this town. It's, you put on an event and people are gonna come.
Yeah.
Once you have some credibility.
Yeah. Was that always the case? Like in 30 years since 95, did it always have that feel like people are going to come out and give that local support, or have you seen that evolve at the same time, in these last few decades?
Yeah. I would say that I can't really speak for the town as a whole. I could say that the niche that Caffe Lena occupies in the social life of this town has definitely shifted. So when I first got here, like I said, it was a little bit more fringy. And I think that there were a lot of stalwarts who loved it and were very devoted to the place and really did come from all walks of life, but they've been coming for a long, long time. And what my job has been is to get those folks to stay and be happy and to add to the fold over the course of time. And when we did the renovation that makes the space look like it does now, that brought in a huge influx of new interest. And so now I feel like, you know, the Chamber of Commerce and Discover Saratoga send people to us in ways that probably didn't really happen a few years back.
Okay.
And we're seen as one of those things that's just sort of like a signature Saratoga activity, and you kind of got to come to Caffe Lena when you come to Saratoga.
Right. Yeah. So it's, you know, Caffe Lena, when I talked to Elizabeth about this, about SPAC, it's like people know that word. It's almost like a verb as much as a noun, because it's been here for, I mean, one, the seniority of time, you know, builds some value in it, but also so much community aspect and, you know, not the nonprofit work that you do is so powerful. But if people don't know really what Caffe Lena is, what is Caffe Lena and the mission behind it?
Sure. Well, at its heart, it's a 1960s coffee house. And so that's coffee house in the old style of, you know, music, poetry, and a place for people to have kind of an elevated, more intellectual kind of exchange with strangers. And when Lena opened this place in 1960, she very intentionally modeled it on the coffee houses of Europe, you know, going back centuries, right? Because that's the tradition. And so in a way, it's an outpost of that culture that started in the United States in the late 50s and early 60s and really flourished for a while, and then kind of, you know, went out of style in the later 70s and 80s. But this place has really hung on, staying pretty true to itself. And so now it's become the longest running venue in its class in the country, which is really cool. Okay, so what we do is all rooted in the folk tradition, and I define folk very broadly. So on the one hand, it's the music of American roots, and that embraces jazz, bluegrass, you know, Appalachian kind of folk music, singer-songwriter traditions and all of that. But on top of that, there's an ethos in folk music that breaks down that barrier between the stage and the audience. And it's seen as very much about the collective, about the everyday people, about our unfolding stories. So it comments on social issues of the day. It talks about people's lives. It's always talked about diversity, equity, and inclusion. You know, that is inherent to what folk music is. And it has often been practiced not just by professionals, but by everyday people, passing it on as a family tradition. And so if you think about that, that means that this music is for everyone. And so a lot of what we do is try to live that tradition and pass that tradition forward. So in addition to the concert programming, we have a lot of participatory stuff, from open mics where you could come up and just do your thing on stage, whether you're a poet, a storyteller, or a musician. We also have a lot of jam circles where you can bring an instrument or just your voice and participate in music making with a whole bunch of strangers. We do a lot of those events. And we also take our headline performers out into the community to play at the soup kitchen and nursing homes and recovery centers and after school programs and all kinds of stuff like that. Yeah. So it's really trying to live out the, you know, what folk music is all about. Yeah. Yeah.
That's so interesting, going back to the history of like the old European coffee houses. And that was, it wasn't just a place to gather with your friends. That's where you got a lot of ideas and expression from things that were going on in time.
Absolutely. That's, you know, not only was it a place to share political conversations and philosophical conversations, but, you know, the greatest classical composers were playing in those settings too.
Yeah.
You know, and so a lot of that music that we think of as something for grand concert halls, you know, started in places not unlike this, with
Right.
cups of coffee, little round tables, and people playing compositions that stood the test of time.
Yeah. And there's I mean, there's something so like what you talked about is like bridging that gap between performer and audience.
Mhm.
And I forget who I heard this from. I think it was a the famous comedian who said, like, a good performance is a dialogue, it's not a monologue, where
Mhm.
it's like you're speaking with an audience. Maybe they're not conversing back, but they're part of the process. And if you do that in such a huge theater or like, you know, a big amphitheater like, you know, SPAC, you can lose that a little bit if you don't have the chops for it. But something like in here, which has that quaintness to it, you can see how it like the environment really
Yeah,
caters to that.
it can bring out that kind of performance from people for sure, including people who play in all different sorts of settings on huge festival stages or in big concert halls. But when they come here, they are able to have that intimacy with the audience. But I always do want to say when I talk about that aspect of Caffe Lena, that there are so many ways for music to be wonderful and exciting. And there's nothing like, you know, the lights and this the wall of sound you can get in a, you know, an
Sure.
amphitheater like
Yeah.
SPAC too. Like that's another way for I think people to really bond around music and to
Mhm.
just on a like a very visceral level to have that kind of shared crackling excitement.
Yeah.
And so it's like, yeah, there are lots of ways for music to be wonderful, but I think that as far as an intimate listening experience, this is literally maybe the finest space in the country for that.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I love that you've kept the mission of it since, you know, since Lena started it
Mhm.
and kept that there. Is that something very constant in your mind of like making sure that each thing that you're doing as you're, you know, building these things and it evolves, that you keep that foundational message the same?
Yes, I would say so. I would say that one thing that Lena really got right, even if she didn't put it in so many words, was giving this space a clear heart and spirit.
Mhm.
And I think, you know, if I've done anything right, it's just being a good listener. And not just the audience, but almost the room itself just tells you what's right and what's not right.
Mhm.
And, um, and you can't impose your own thing on it. It's bigger than that. And so when I came in here, it was not that long after Lena had died, and Lena died very unexpectedly. I mean, she wasn't in great shape or anything like that, but she, you know, nobody was expecting that she was going to die. And so there was no succession plan or anything like that. And it wasn't a nonprofit either. It was just her own small
Mhm.
private business. It ran very much like a nonprofit or kind of a collective with a lot of people who like sort of partially lived here and, you
Sure.
know,
Uh-huh.
all of that kind of stuff. It was like a crash pad in the clubhouse. But so it was like when a family loses mom, you know, it's like that's the hub of the wheel and the spokes are kind of like collateral and
Sure.
stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Mhm.
It's tough and it takes a while to get everything turning and running smooth again. So the board had some certain ideas that I think were very laudable ideas, but it was just not something that the community was ready for at that point. And so I very quickly, like within weeks, realized, you know what? These people know what the place is, and I need to just kind of listen to what they want it to be. And so it's been very incremental to get from what it was when I first arrived, which was a place that ran, I think we were doing I think we were doing 3 shows a week and we had an open mic. That's what we were
Okay.
doing. And I was working 20 hours a week. And then I wasn't booking the shows for the first 5 years. I was just sort of running shows, writing grants, doing like trying to develop the membership
Okay.
program and stuff like that. Somebody else was booking the shows. Then after I'd been here for 5 years, I went full time and started booking the shows. And I was really like the only one doing it for quite a long time. And I would listen to the music, decide who to book them, promote the show, run the show, pay the performer.
Yeah.
It was like, I ran the soundboard.
Hat, yeah.
I ran the soundboard. I was like in charge of, the kitchen, to the
Sure.
extent that anybody was in charge of the kitchen. So it was, like, there's a certain joy in all of that,
Oh, yeah.
it was really fun, to
Yeah.
tell you the truth. But, as it got, as more possibilities came our way,
Mhm.
we needed to start adding to the team. And,
But you look back at those times fondly, right?
I
Like when,
do,
yeah,
I really do. I look back at them very fondly. And Joe, who does sound here, he's done sound like on and off, but mostly on for about 50 years.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Joe's a total legend. He's left me in the dust. But yeah, he started coming here when he was 17 years old.
Wow.
And he's like 67 now.
Mhm.
So, Joe and I just always say we sometimes we wish that the old cafe was like sitting in a museum somewhere. We could
Right,
just
you
kind
just
of
go visit it and just hang out for a day. I know, right?
Like, we're
Yeah.
all so happy for how many more lives are touched by it now, and just the feeling that a new generation is really starting to own it.
Uh-huh.
And that there are all these young people around now who recognize the spirit of it, love the place, and want to carry it forward. And that's all so wonderful. But yeah, you look at that middle picture right there, and that's just kind of what it was.
Right, yeah. Oh, that's great. That's awesome. I
Yeah.
mean, well, it's powerful, the memories from there. And I mean, 50 years from what you said of
Yeah.
him, doing that. I mean, that's like a tattoo
Yeah.
in that spot. You mentioned being a good listener, and that was like one of your superpowers. Has that always been something that was like a power of yours, or did that evolve and develop a lot more as you got into your career as a director?
I think it's just my personality, and I think that where I was actually going with that was, you had asked about, are we carrying through Lena's
Sure.
vision? And so I had to tune in to learn what Lena's vision was, and you do that by kind of walking a mile in her shoes, but also just observing what she did with her life, which was
Gotcha.
create this place and create this community. So I think that what she made was essentially spot on, and something that I was really in sync with. And that's just a stroke of luck, because I was the only person who applied for this job. When, when I was hired as the organization's very first executive director,
Yeah.
I was the only applicant.
Really? Did you know that?
Not until
Okay.
they hired me. So,
Still got the job.
I got the job. I got the job. The competition was fierce.
Yeah.
Which is, now, I just want to say,
Mhm.
they did not say in the advertisement, for hiring this position, which was just like a little line thing in the
Sure.
classifieds of the Saratogian, which is where I found this job.
Mhm.
They didn't say it was Caffe Lena. And I think if they had said it was Caffe Lena, they probably would have gotten a whole bunch
Sure.
of applications, but nobody knew. So I just kind of applied blind to this, arts organization, is what they said. And I think that they did that intentionally to, try and find some fresh new mind.
Sure.
And not just hire from within. So, but anybody could have, if you think, if there's like down to one candidate, my gosh, it could have been anybody. And it just happened to be somebody who said, yeah,
Uh-huh.
there's a lot that this place has right.
Yeah.
There are possibilities for growth and for an evolution of what's happening here. Absolutely. But I think at its heart of hearts, it's exactly the kind of place I would want to spend my life.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, how serendipitous, really.
yeah. And then as far as listening goes, I just, I, unlike Saratoga, am actually a pretty introverted person. And what I like to do is stand on the edge and watch, and just watch everybody and everything that's going on. That's what I really prefer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm similar in that way. Yeah. the moments of extroversion,
Yeah,
but internally
yeah,
very introverted from there. And
yeah,
it is, you sit back and you observe from there.
yeah,
And being a director, I mean, I would assume that's one of the biggest roles that you have when you're in a director and you have a team. It's more about watching and listening rather than giving details and
mhm.
giving your ideas and like go from there. And I mean, 30 years of being a director, how has that part of your job changed from doing everything yourself to then having to hire and recruit a team? How has your thought process of your job changed
Yeah,
from the beginning to now?
well, it fits and starts and with it's that moving from I do everything, it's my idea and I do everything to I need to give the vision, try to create a structure around it and then like let people do their work and just kind of offer gentle guidance. That's been just a huge challenge for me in terms of building a skill set. So the first full-time person that was brought in addition to me when we were trying to gear up the organization to get ready for the capital campaign that we would need to do to save the building, was actually hired by the board of directors. And I just had trouble sharing my space, sharing the job, sharing the organization. It wasn't so much a total unwillingness, it's just I didn't know how to do it.
Sure.
And so that ended up being just not super satisfying for the other person, or for me. And it was really nobody's fault exactly. It just was a bad process.
Sure.
And so then, I don't know if we learned from it or what, but every other hire has been my hire. And I look for people who, first and foremost, are just in terms of what they want in the world, they see this as a way to get there, you know, whether it's a certain kind of like community that they want, a certain form of health, whether, they just love the smallness or what, there's something about it that just in terms of their temperament. And I figure any kind of skills, if I could learn them, they can learn them.
Right. Exactly.
And so it's not that I'm looking for, like the most experienced person with the like incredible marketing resume, or
Right.
like,
Right. Yeah.
whatever. Like we'll figure it out.
Mhm.
If it's the right people, we'll figure it out. So when right after we renovated was when it really needed to ramp up and grow. So I think we had maybe like a couple people on staff at that point, like right after the renovation. But right after the renovation, we were trying to go 7 nights a week. I was still running the kitchen. I was still
Mhm.
running all of the shows. I was still booking everything and still doing a little bit of fundraising after the capital campaign. And it was really too much.
Yeah.
Like it was 72 hours a week and I just am not that guy.
Sure.
So then we started, we needed to grow the organization. And so my board president at the time, Jim Mastriani, is a very successful entrepreneur himself. He went to business school at Cornell. He's such a smart guy and he really understands systems. And so I get this little like manila envelope in the mail and it's the E-Myth, which is like
Oh, yeah.
the #1 book that anybody trying to start a small
Yep.
business needs to read. And I was like, oh God, what is this? And so I started reading it and I'm like, got it.
Yep.
Now I understand.
Mhm.
I need to build a structure. And so I sat down and I mapped out what I thought, like, if my vision for this place was fully realized, what kind of staff would it need to support that? Okay. What are we doing now and which squares have my name on them? Oh, all of them. Okay.
Right.
So now we need to like figure out, in order to get to the next level, what's the #1 thing that like I can't do anymore, that I need to bring in somebody else to do. And so then we just started building. And we have like 12 or 13 people working here now.
Okay,
And a lot of them are very part-time, so some of them are full-time, like 6 of them are full-time. And now we're able to run a school of music, run Caffe Lena on the road, run 7 nights a week, have all of these jam circles going, and just have so much going on all the time.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's such an important lesson, Sarah, because it's easy to think from the outside of like, oh yeah, you can't do everything. You
Right.
just need to find other people. But when you're in it and you're doing it, it's you can get into that system. You've created a system without creating a system of I am the system. I'm going to do everything. And I think
Yes.
it was, James Clear has popularized the term in Atomic Habits. We don't rise to the level of our goals. We fall to a level of our systems. But I think he actually got that from the E-Myth Revisited book on that. So that's really powerful from there.
The example that they give in the E-Myth is a woman who loves baking pies. She's really good at baking pies, and she just can't imagine anything more fun than spending her life baking pies. So she opens a bakery. And it turns out that opening a bakery is not baking pies.
Nope.
It's doing bookkeeping and managing a staff and, handling the physical plant and ordering supplies and all of that. And so that's what it kind of made visible for me. Oh, I get it. It's not just about putting on concerts. It's this whole thing.
Sure.
And it's like, I think that Jim saw that I was ready to see that. Like maybe a few years ago, I wasn't quite ready, but now I was ready. And so that was the first book that arrived, but they kept it coming.
Kept rolling. Yep, exactly.
And so it's like, he gave me a mini crash course, and he's been off the board for a few years now because he had his own business plan and he was going to put that many years into the cafe, and now he's doing some other stuff. But he's, I can go to him anytime. Sometimes I'm just like, Jim, I've got a thing going on. He's like, come on over.
You need people like that.
I know.
That's great. Yeah. Oh,
He's a
that's
treasure.
invaluable. Absolutely. How have you seen the arts change in your time? From the music, I mean, so much advancements and technology and just change. It's a whole new generation that's coming in. Have you seen a difference in like the arts from music to poetry or spoken word? How has that evolved?
Yeah, well, I would say that one of the very first things that jumps out at me as a change that I saw years and years ago was when people started having iPods and stuff like that. Well, like even before that, this happened before I came, but the Walkmans, like the first time that people just had like a set of headphones and a personal device, and they could kind of choose their own music in a way that they had never done before. So that was like one step. But when it got into being able to load up a little device with all kinds of music and having the internet suggesting like, oh, you like that? Try that, try that, try that. It really changed how people listen to music, because it used to be, the person with the big record collection, and a record collection grows like, okay, I've got $15 this week, I can buy another record, and it's like a little bit, and it takes years and years to fill up those shelves, but your shelves can fill up like that now. And so I felt like it really changed people's willingness to listen to new stuff.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so it's like people got really acclimated to not kind of hearing the same music all the time, but realizing that the world of music was huge, and that they could actually find stuff that they loved in places they never expected, in global music and traditional music, not just on pop radio, but there's all kinds of great stuff out there. So that I feel like really served the cafe, and probably served a lot of music venues, I would think, who are doing stuff that wasn't like mainstream.
Sure.
So that's one thing that jumps out at me. Another thing is, well, it's kind of a different issue, but so I think that you talked to Elizabeth Sobel recently. So when she moved to town, I'm not even sure why I did this, because believe me, SPAC had never paid any attention to Caffe Lena ever before, but I reached out to her and I was like, hey, want to have coffee? And she's like, sure. And we had a great conversation, and it really, she is so down to earth and really kind of humanized that very elevated world of music that happens over there. Elevated either because it's, you know, commercially elevated or because it's culturally elevated. Yep. And it turns out she loved what we were doing here, and of course everybody loves what they're doing there, and there was an openness to actually working together, which would never have happened previously. And so we do some shows over there, especially during the pandemic. We were able to be of service here, and there were some concerts that were produced on the stage. We were a streaming platform for Jazz Fest, did all kinds of really fun stuff. Then we, in our festival that we do over there, Caffe Lena at SPAC, it's just gotten to be a really big deal that happens every October. So yeah, and then we also just, you know, trade ideas, but I see what's happening over there. She's really, you know, expanded in a way that, again, I think the audience is open to not just being in a little niche anymore. So they're able to have a jazz series. She brings in some global music. Well, if she's bringing in global music and we're bringing in global music, then that's going to start to create an audience for it. And UPH has the Passport series every other month. They do a global show that's produced by Mona Golub, she's like the grandmother of global music in the capital region. She's been doing it for decades. Okay. Yeah.
Wow, that's so fascinating. It's like, it's so interesting when you look at entrepreneurship in the creative space, like arts and music and stuff, where it's like you have to have this combination of knowing the times and the trends of where things are going, at the same time holding to the heart and the foundation of what it really is. And I see a lot of synergy from you and Elizabeth, and could see how that conversation over coffee was really good.
Yeah.
And kind of working there. But it's interesting you mentioned that about not recognizing new things as much. You know, I had a friend when I was in my early 20s living in Boston, and this was like the Napster LimeWire days. Remember when that first came out? And he would find new music all the time of like, you got to check out this band. You got to check out this. And I'm like, how are you finding all of this? And he's like, oh, like he just goes down rabbit holes and you just found new stuff. Found out when he lived out in California in Lake Tahoe, he lived with two DJs who would go to the record stores all the time, and you'd spend hours in the record store just funneling through the old time, where now it's the speed of what you can get of new content. I could see how that has changed.
Access, you know, just the ease of it's in your pocket, you know, as opposed to you got to find time to go to the record store.
Yeah.
So there's, I mean, and there's something like everything to do with the internet. There are wonderful things about that, and then kind of sad things about that. Like, for example, DJs used to be really important people as far as like picking what we were going to hear. And there were DJs that you could really trust to find the great stuff, and, you know, that broke people's careers for them. And now DJs are kind of a dying breed. You know, there are very few young DJs starting up their new programs. It's kind of something for older folks. And like when I go to these folk conferences, the DJ circle is older people now who are, you know, and they still have a devoted following, but it's like, who's gonna take that over? Anybody? Or do we just leave it to the algorithm?
Sure. Yeah.
And the algorithm can really get stuck in its ways.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's just groupthink. And so, for example, we put together a playlist every month, just one song of each band that's going to be coming through that month. If you were to go on Spotify and just pick the most popular song from the new album, it would all kind of be in the same pocket, you know, even though one band is, you know, from California and playing bluegrass music, and the other band is like a sort of jazzy singer-songwriter from Montreal. they're gonna drive toward the same kind of chord
Sure,
structures and
yeah,
everything like that. And I worry a lot about that because what you don't, and this is the same thing with AI, it's like if you start to get that very familiar kind of like average of everybody,
mhm.
then I think that people get very acclimated to that and trust that, and everything else starts to seem a little bit weird and less appealing somehow, or like more puzzling to figure out.
Sure. Well, yeah, and I mean, the algorithm of stuff, it is not built for your personal growth and to expand your thoughts. It's meant to give you what they think you already want
Right.
from there. It's very interesting because like, I think the big thing though is you can get all the speed of new things that is coming in, everything's in your pocket. And if something's so accessible, you'll naturally start to devalue it a bit more because it's not as challenging to get. But then you come to a space like Caffe Lena and you see a live performance. There's such a tangible feeling that you know is different when the performer's right in front of you and there. That's why I don't think it will ever, go away. It will never fully get off because there's such a fundamental human connection that you get
Yeah.
from connecting with a group of people in a similar spot, listening to a performance, especially if somebody's creating something out of thin air, like a song or a new poem or spoken word.
Yeah. Well, and that goes back to where did we come from? And again, we have a work of art over there that shows some people in a forest singing and playing together in the night. And there's an owl. And it tells a whole story that I won't get into what the story is right now, but for almost all time of there being such a thing as a human being, that is how we listen to music. And we are physical creatures. We're not just ideas, And so there's a big difference between experiencing pulses of rhythm, on the surface of your skin and the heat of the people around you and all of that. That is going to speak to your evolution in ways that just, a musical idea coming through a headphone can't.
100. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So this has been an absolute blast getting to listen to you, getting to listen to your evolution of everything that you've been doing. This has been awesome. I have some rapid fire questions I want to close out with you. So they start kind of easy and then they go a little bit more deep and existential.
This is so crazy. I'm like the slowest thinker in the world. So I'll just say, you're gonna see a whole different side.
We'll start with the amateur ones and we'll build up to the pros. Okay. Early riser or night owl?
Oh, night owl.
Night owl?
Yeah.
All right. Is there a favorite hour of the day?
I would say probably around 10 at night.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Window or aisle seat?
Oh, window.
You like window?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. I've had a string of aisle people, so I'm glad we got a little shift over.
Oh my gosh, yeah, a window, and I want the shade up.
Shade up. Oh, you're that one.
Yes,
Okay.
I want to be able to see everything that's going on out there.
Even the early morning flight, you're keeping the shade up?
Oh, always. I'm so I go up into the clouds and I look at them and it's hard to believe that they're just temporary.
Right.
They look like this whole city that somebody built up there, it's just stunning.
It is something really cool going on there. So I think I know the answer to this one, but beach or mountains?
Oh, beach, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, I grew up spending my summers on the shore in Rhode Island and
Oh, beautiful beaches.
oh God, but I also love the mountains so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a complete mixture of the coast of Rhode Island and the mountains of Vermont.
Yeah. Weird question. Do you feel more kind of creative in mountains area or beach? Does one kind of stick a little bit more?
I think that beach definitely soothes the frantic mind and slows me down and calms me down. And most of my creative work, I actually have completed one novel and written most of a second one has been done in the mountains.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. There's a great book called Blue Mind if you haven't read it.
Okay.
I have to give that recommendation to you, so we'll talk about that later. What was your first concert?
I think my first okay, so one was the SPAC concert, the Grateful Dead, when I was 18. But one of my first musical experiences that I've never forgotten and comes back to me all the time is when I was 4 years old, my mom took me to the Wadsworth Athenaeum, which is in Hartford, Connecticut, and they were having a kind of a recreation of a boar's head feast. And so they had like a little band of people playing early English music, and they had the pig's head on a platter and everything like that. But I loved that music so much,
Okay.
that rhythm and that whining tone of it, and it felt so exciting to me.
Oh, wow.
I
Right
think that
at
was the
4 years
first one.
old. That's
Yeah.
amazing. That's very cool. What's something you've recommended the most to family and friends? A book, a movie, a TV show, a band?
Oh my gosh. You know what? I'm just not much of a recommender.
Mhm.
I think, I don't know that I have an answer for that one. Uh, I think that when I make recommendations to people, I would recommend that you get a cat. That's what I would recommend.
Okay.
The cat needs it and you need the cat.
That is the first answer I've ever heard of that one. I have to write that one down. Okay. I love it. All right, so you have a Mount Rushmore dinner party. You could invite 3 people to go and have dinner with.
Okay. All right. I absolutely need Bernie Sanders there.
Okay.
Okay. It doesn't have to be people of the past, does it?
Oh, no, anybody.
Okay,
Yep.
good.
You can
So-
resurrect if you want to, or you can just, they can be alive. Yep.
All right. So I definitely want Bernie Sanders there. I would certainly like to meet Lena, who I never met.
Okay.
So she should be there. But the other person might be to be honest, and just to kind of like probably say more about who I am than I should, but Dorothy Day, who is the founder of the Catholic Worker Movement, which is still alive today, but it's essentially a movement of people who are absolutely devoted to the poor and kind of live a life of poverty themselves and run food programs and everything like that. And it's Catholic inspired, but it's very much outside the mainstream church and very radical.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. What's your guilty pleasure?
Oh, it's Stewart's ice cream.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which one? Which flavor?
The chocolate peanut butter cup.
Yeah.
So whenever I do something in town that, I told you I'm an introvert, and when I do something that like has to take me well outside that space and like put me outside my comfort zone and kind of like takes a lot of energy out of me, what I usually do afterwards is I go up to the Stewart's that's at the corner of Congress Park over there, like kind of on the back end of Congress Park. And I sit down with whatever the personage is that's at a booth there, which is all kinds of people.
Yes.
And I just plop down with any of them with my ice cream cone and just chill.
That is awesome. That is the most eclectic group of people you can find at Stewart's.
So. And I've had a lot of wonderful conversations.
That's amazing. If you haven't tried the Stargazer yet, which is a special blend of Stewart's, I think there's crack cocaine in Stewart's ice cream.
Wow.
It brings you back so much. So
Stargazer.
yeah, amazing.
Okay. On the way.
What's the best advice that you ever received?
Oh. Best advice I ever received. Oh my gosh. I don't know. I could think of I think it's God, I have that Catholic thing kind of stuck in my head right now. And I shouldn't have gone down that rabbit hole, but it has to do with the golden rule, I think, which was just such a core part of upbringing, and enables you to see the humanity in every person and to remove yourself from whatever the kind of prescribed relationship might be between you and the store clerk, the waiter, the customer, the teacher, whatever. It enables you to move past whatever that formulaic relationship is and connect with people's humanity and expect them and open your humanity to them.
That's great.
Yeah.
I love that answer. What's the worst advice you ever gotten?
Gosh, it would be anything to do with, people telling me that I needed to, think more about my future, and sort of like prepare for a career and do stuff like that.
Mhm.
Because, that was not taking me in a direction that made me happy at all. And my mom, who was very close to, died very unexpectedly when I was 25 years old. And I saw that she had put on hold a lot of things, could be trips, could be experiences that she probably thought she would do in sort of the last part of her life, and she never got to have the last part of her life. And that made me overnight cut ties with certain things.
Sure.
And just say, this is what I've got right now, I'm gonna do it. Yeah.
That's great. All right, last one, and this is my favorite one to close with. Who inspires you the most in your life?
Um, uh, it's kind of a type of person more than a single person.
Okay.
What really inspires me is people like Pete Seeger, Bernie Sanders, Dorothy Day, a few people who have taken a world of dissatisfaction with the way things are, all these different kinds of angers, all these different kinds of hopes, seeing just a myriad problems out there and boiling it down to some simple principles that are easy to follow and to stick with year after year after year. And that's what I've really tried to do for myself also, is say, it's this, this, and this, and these are the important things. And to be able to encounter the din of the world and make sense of it, because you have this simple formula inside. And so that I can see that in certain people out there in the world, and that's what I tend to really admire and try to emulate.
I love that. It reminds me of the Da Vinci quote, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication.
There you go.
So there it is. Right there.
I like that.
Sarah Craig, thank you so much for coming on. This has been
Thank
great. I really love not just the work that you do, but just the journey that you've been on. I mean, 30 years of being in this town and keeping this, going and evolving it. I think the arts and really the creation of things is so powerful, and what we need is so much in our community. And the fact that you're, one of those leading it from the front is really inspiring.
Well, that's very kind of you to say so. It's an amazing opportunity to have this place,
Yeah.
to do things with. So
Mhm.
thank you very much. You made this conversation very easy and fun.
I'm glad. Yeah. If people want to check out more of what Caffe Lena is doing and stuff, what's the best place that they can go?
Yep, we have a website, caffelena.org. It's a double F in cafe, and make sure that's where you are, caffelena.org. And it has a snapshot of everything that's going on here and a little bit more of the backstory of the place, which is fun to read. And you can easily sample all of the music by just watching videos and find something to do. And I always really encourage people, don't just come to a show, but dust off that guitar that's sitting in the back of your closet.
I love it.
Whatever, and come do something yourself, or like, don't be shy about that poem you wrote. You love it. Come read it at open mic. You might be surprised at the response you get.
I love it. That's great. Sarah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Listeners, thank you. Catch you on the next one. Peace. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you got some great value from this episode and a little more insight into some inspiring work happening right in this town. If you want to know more about our guests' work and check out more of what they are doing, please click on the links in the show notes below. And along with that, check out the direct link to 5-Minute Mindset. This is a 5-minute video that gives you the 2 best practices that you can do every day in 5 minutes that will create a major impact in your mental strength and resilience. If you are on your own mission to become physically and mentally stronger, these practices will be a serious game changer for you. Seriously. Thank you again for joining me today. I'll see you on the next one.